They mocked my daughter's science fair project, calling her the dumb kid of the divorcee. The judges barely looked rever until a stranger walked in, looked at her project, and said this needs to be patented. They called my daughter the dumb kid of the divorcee, loud enough for her to hear it, loud enough for me to hear it. The judges walked past her science fair project like it didn't even exist. One of them smirked. Another one whispered something to a colleague and they both laughed. I stood there, holding my breath, fighting back tears and rage, wondering how much more my little girl could take before she crumbled. Her name is Lena. She's 11. She built something with her own hands, something she was proud of. She had spent weeks digging through old electronics, salvaging wires, testing circuits, and reading science blogs way beyond her grade level. And when she showed up to that gym, holding her head up even after all the whispers, I thought maybe, just maybe, someone would see her. They didn't. Not until a man walked in. He wasn't part of the school. He wasn't wearing a judge's badge, but he stopped at her booth. He asked her questions. He listened. Then he looked at me, dead serious, and said, "This needs to be patented." That's when everything changed. My name is Kayla Martinez, and for the past 5 years, it's just been me and my daughter Lena. We live in a small town in Pennsylvania, the kind of town where people still leave notes on neighbors' doorsteps when your grass gets too long, and where your reputation sticks like gum under a desk. Everyone knows everyone. And if you mess up, even once, they remember it forever. I married young, fresh out of high school. My ex-husband Tom was charming, funny, and completely unprepared for the reality of fatherhood. When Lena was 6, he packed a duffel bag and left. No warning. No goodbyes. Just a text that said, "This isn't the life I want." After that, the rumors started. People said I drove him away, said I was irresponsible, said I should have known better. I didn't have time to defend myself. I was working 2 jobs, waiting tables in the morning, stocking shelves at night. Every dollar went to rent, bills, and keeping Lena's backpack filled with snacks and school supplies. There wasn't room for pride. I'd show up to parent nights with greasy hair under a baseball cap and bags under my eyes from a double shift. The other moms would nod politely, then turn back to each other. I knew I didn't belong in their little PTA brunch circle, and that was fine. I wasn't there to make friends. I was there for Lena. Lena has always been different, quiet, curious, endlessly creative. She doesn't chase after popularity. She doesn't need a crowd. Give her a broken radio, a bag of batteries, and a notebook, and she's in heaven. Ever since she was little, she's been fascinated with how things work. She used to take apart old toys just to see the gears inside, then try to build something new out of the pieces. One night, I came home from work and found our kitchen table covered in wires, magnets, and duct tape. She looked up at me with the most serious expression and said, "I think I can make electricity from shoes." At first, I laughed. Not in a mean way, I was just exhausted and didn't understand what she meant. But she kept explaining, using terms like kinetic energy and conductive materials, and I realized she'd been watching science channels and teaching herself things I never learned in school. That's when she told me about the science fair. I could tell she was nervous asking. Her voice got soft, like she expected me to say no. And truthfully, I almost did. The entry fee, the materials she needed, the time, it all felt like too much. But the way she looked at me, hopeful and scared all at once, I knew I had to find a way. So I picked up extra shifts, asked my brother for help with rides, and told her to go for it. For the next 3 weeks, Lena lived and breathed that project. She turned an old pair of sneakers into a working prototype that lit up a tiny bulb when you walked in them. Her theory was that if scaled, the tech could help generate power in remote areas just through daily movement, walking to school, working in fields, running errands. Nothing fancy, just small renewable energy made from scraps. She worked on it after school, during weekends, and sometimes past midnight. Her room looked like a little lab, spools of copper wire, old phone chargers, LED strips from broken flashlights. She kept a journal filled with diagrams, numbers, and test results. She even created a display board using cardboard we pulled from behind a grocery store. She painted it by hand. She named her project Power in Your Step. I was so proud, not because I thought she'd win, but because she didn't give up. She believed in it, in herself. But as the fair got closer, I started to hear whispers from other parents. Is she really entering? I heard her mom's barely keeping things together. I mean, let's be honest, no father figure, no structure, what do you expect? I stayed quiet, smiled through my teeth and kept showing up. Lena didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she did, and just didn't want to make me feel worse. Either way, she kept working. The night before the fair, she packed up her project with the care of someone handling glass. She even ironed her big brother's old button-down shirt and wore it like a lab coat. When I looked at her that morning, standing there with her little invention, trying so hard to look confident, it hit me just how brave she really was. She didn't just want to be seen. She wanted to be taken seriously. And I prayed that someone, anyone, would look past her last name and see what she built. The morning of the science fair felt like something bigger than just a school event. Lena woke up early, already dressed, before I finished pouring my coffee. She had packed her project into 2 cardboard boxes the night before, labeling each side in neat handwriting, handle with care, science in progress. She even made a checklist, ticking things off one by one: battery packs, wire connections, poster board, backup flashlight, notebook. She was ready. Nervous, but ready. We loaded everything into my car and drove to the school in silence. Not because we had nothing to say, but because we were both holding something in. She was trying to stay confident. I was trying not to cry. As we pulled into the parking lot, I saw clusters of kids in matching t-shirts, parents unloading professionally printed displays, giant trifold boards with 3D models and flashy lights. A few had banners. One project had a solar panel. Another had a mini wind turbine. Lena looked down at her scuffed shoeboxes and cardboard signs, then back out the window. You okay? I asked. She nodded. Yeah. I mean, it's not about how it looks, right? Right, I said. But we both knew it kind of was. We walked into the gym, which had been transformed into a science wonderland. Tables lined up like a maze, kids buzzing with excitement, parents sipping coffee and offering coaching tips like Little League coaches before a big game. The judges were already walking around with clipboards. We found her assigned table near the back corner. No one said hello, no one offered help. Lena quietly unpacked her project, straightened her display, and tested the tiny LED bulb that lit up when someone stepped on the pressure panel she had hidden inside the sneaker. Worked. Her eyes lit up for just a second. That's when the whispers started. A girl 2 tables down leaned toward her friend and pointed. That's the girl I told you about, the one with the mom who works at Dino's. The other girl laughed. Oh yeah. I heard her dad ran off or something. My stomach twisted. I turned around, half expecting a teacher to step in. Nothing. Just polite smiles and nods. One of the PTA moms glanced at me, and then turned back to her group, whispering into her coffee cup. Lena pretended not to notice, but I saw the way her hands gripped the edge of the table just a little tighter. I wanted to pull her out of there, just grab her hand and leave. But she had worked so hard for this, so I stayed silent. Then the judges came. There were 3 of them, 2 men and 1 woman. They were laughing about something when they approached Lena's table. One barely looked up from his clipboard. Another scanned her project board for maybe 2 seconds. The third one read the title, Power in Your Step, and raised an eyebrow. What is this? Some kind of shoe light? He asked, half smiling. Lena stood up a little straighter and said, It's a motion-powered energy generator that lights a small LED bulb. I made it using recycled materials. If developed further, it could be useful in off-grid communities. The man cut her off with a nod, already walking to the next table. The woman judge lingered for another second, looked at the sneaker, then said, That's cute, before moving on. Cute. That was the word she used. Not interesting, not innovative, just cute. Lena sat back down. She didn't say anything, but I saw her eyes flick toward me, then to the exit door, and then back to her project. I sat on the bleachers, fists clenched in my lap, watching other kids show off projects with miniature volcanoes that spit glitter and slime, with parents recording them on the latest phones and cheering every sentence. Lena's table was quiet, ignored. A few students passed by and snickered. Isn't that the dumb kid of the divorcee? The words hit me like a slap. Lena heard it too. Her face didn't change, but I could feel it. She was shutting down. That spark I'd seen in her just hours ago, it was starting to dim. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and tell them all who she was, what she had done, how she had made something from nothing with her own 2 hands. But I didn't, because she wasn't done yet. She didn't look up. She didn't cry. She sat there, silent, next to her little invention, surrounded by people who had already decided she didn't matter. And still, she didn't give up. Not yet. I was sitting on the bleachers, gripping the edge of the seats so tightly my fingers had gone numb. My heart was pounding. My face was hot. I wanted to march down there, grab one of those judges by the collar, and ask them how they could dismiss a child's work like that, without a second look, without a question, without a single ounce of respect. But I didn't. I took a deep breath, then another. I looked at Lena. She was still sitting at her table, staring down at her project. Her back was straight. Her hands were folded in her lap. But I could tell she was unraveling, slowly, quietly, like a thread being pulled loose one tug at a time. She didn't deserve this. Not after everything. Not after the nights she spent soldering wires under a desk lamp while I made ramen noodles. Not after all the work she put into learning something no one had ever taught her. She wasn't just trying to win a ribbon. She was trying to be heard. I stood up. I started walking toward her table. My feet were moving before I knew what I was going to say. Part of me wanted to pull her out of that gym right then and there, tell her we didn't need their approval, that she was too good for their tiny-minded judgments, that their opinions meant nothing. But then I saw her face. She was talking to a boy who had wandered over from another row. She was explaining how the project worked, showing him the pressure panel and how stepping on it sent energy through copper coils to light the bulb. Her voice was soft, but she was speaking. Her eyes were focused. Her hands moved with confidence. She was still trying. I stopped walking. That's when it hit me. I didn't need to save her. She didn't need me to fight this battle for her. She needed me to believe in her, to show her that her worth wasn't tied to their recognition. So instead of stepping in, I crouched beside her table, rested my hand on her knee, and whispered, "I'm proud of you. I don't care if they give you a ribbon or not. What you've built here, this matters. Don't forget that." She looked at me and blinked hard, her mouth slightly open like she didn't know what to say. Then she nodded just once and turned back to her project. I stepped back, returned to the bleachers, and watched. For the next 10 minutes, Lena stayed at her table while kids started tearing down their displays. The judges were meeting at the front of the gym, tallying scores, pointing at clipboards. Nobody came back to her table, not a single person. But she didn't pack up. She didn't leave. She just kept standing there like she still had something to offer, like it still mattered. That's when he walked in. I didn't notice him at first. He wasn't wearing a badge or carrying a clipboard. He looked out of place, maybe in his early 60s, wearing a dark blue blazer, clean-shaven, the kind of man who didn't come to middle school science fairs just to browse. He walked slowly, scanning the rows of projects. He paused at the wind turbine, asked a few polite questions, nodded, and moved on. Then he stopped at Lena's table. I held my breath. He looked at the sneaker, tapped the bulb, asked her something. I couldn't hear what it was, but Lena straightened her shoulders and began explaining everything from start to finish. He listened, really listened. For several minutes, he didn't say a word. He just nodded, leaned closer, and watched the demonstration as Lena stepped on the panel and the bulb lit up. Then he looked at her notebook. She handed it to him. He flipped through the pages slowly. I could see his expression shift. His eyes narrowed. His mouth tightened, like he was trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Finally, he looked up and asked her a question. Lena answered confidently. Then he looked at me. He stepped back from the table, gestured to the project and said clearly, "This isn't just smart. This needs to be patented." Everything went quiet. The judges at the front stopped talking. A few parents turned their heads. The boy who had mocked Lena earlier was staring. And my daughter, my quiet, brilliant daughter, just stood there frozen while the man shook her hand and handed her his card. That moment, right there, was the shift. The line between being invisible and being seen. And Lena had crossed it all on her own. The silence after the stranger's words was louder than anything else in that gym. He stood there, pointing to my daughter's makeshift display, and said it again, this time directly to the stunned judges, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "This needs to be patented." For a second, no one moved. Then one of the judges, the same man who'd barely glanced at Lena's project earlier, walked back to her table. He was suddenly interested. He cleared his throat like he was resetting the whole scene and asked Lena, "Could you walk me through this again?" Lena looked at me. I nodded once, not saying a word. She took a deep breath, turned to the judge and started from the beginning. She explained how she'd used recycled materials to create a kinetic energy conversion device, how each step compressed a small coil inside the shoe's sole to generate power, and how she wired it to light an LED. She explained how it could help kids in areas with limited access to electricity. She even pulled out her notebook and showed her recorded test data, voltage readings, wiring diagrams, and step-by-step improvements she'd made over time. The judge leaned in, eyes wide now. "You did this by yourself?" he asked. Lena nodded. "Mostly. My mom helped me find parts, but I built it." The woman judge, who had called the project cute earlier, came over next. This time, she asked real questions. She examined the shoe, took notes, even smiled once. Then came the questions from the parents. "What do you mean this could power homes? How long does the light stay on? Where did you learn how to build something like this?" It was surreal. People who hadn't said a word to her all day were now hovering around her table, leaning in like she was the center of the universe. I watched it unfold like a dream, like everything had been flipped upside down in the space of 5 minutes. The stranger stood nearby, arms crossed, a quiet pride in his face, like he already knew what was going to happen. I finally walked over and asked him who he was. He smiled and said, "Dr. Ethan Caldwell. I teach mechanical engineering at MIT. I'm in town visiting my niece." Of course he was. He told me he'd come to the fair just to support her, but Lena's project caught his eye immediately. He'd never seen a child that age apply real-world engineering principles so effectively, especially using salvaged materials. "This isn't just a cute school project," he said. "It's a prototype with serious potential." He nearly burst into tears right there. He handed me his card and said he wanted to connect us with a nonprofit that helped young inventors file patents and get mentorship in STEM fields. "She needs guidance," he said. "The right support could take this far." Lena was glowing. Not just smiling, glowing. It was the first time I'd ever seen her stand like that, tall and grounded, with a kind of confidence that can only come from being truly seen. Kids who had laughed at her earlier were now silent. The ones who called her names were watching her like she was someone else entirely. The awards ceremony was brief. They gave her a special recognition and innovation ribbon, something they probably made up on the spot. She didn't win first place, but it didn't matter. Not to her. Not to me. As the gym started to empty, one of the teachers came over and patted her shoulder. "I didn't know you had this in you, Lena," she said. "I wanted to say she always had it in her. You just didn't bother to look." Back at home that night, Lena placed the ribbon on our refrigerator door with a single piece of tape. Then she went to her room, took apart the prototype, and started sketching improvements. She didn't care about praise. She was already thinking about what came next. And me? I sat at the kitchen table holding Dr. Caldwell's card, thinking about how close we came to missing that moment. If he hadn't walked in, if Lena had given up, if I had pulled her out, it all could have ended before it began. But she stayed. She stood her ground. And when someone finally looked, really looked, they saw what I had known all along. My daughter wasn't the dumb kid of the divorcee. She was a genius waiting to be noticed. It's been 7 months since the science fair. 7 months since that gymnasium. Since the ribbon. Since the moment everything shifted. Sometimes I still think about how close we came to walking away unnoticed. All it would have taken was one more snub, one more sideways comment, and Lena might have packed up her project and left thinking she had failed, that she wasn't smart enough, that her ideas didn't matter. And if that had happened, I honestly don't know how long it would have taken her to try again. But that's not what happened. What happened is this. She got seen, not for who they thought she was, the quiet kid with the waitress mom and a missing dad, but for who she actually was, a thinker, a builder, a problem solver. After the fair, Dr. Caldwell kept his word. He connected us with an organization that helps young inventors navigate the early patent process. A few weeks later, Lena and I were sitting in a video meeting with engineers and legal experts from across the country. They treated her like she belonged there because she did. They walked her through filing a provisional patent for her power in your step design. Lena asked questions about voltage regulations, sustainable materials, and battery alternatives. Half the time, I was just sitting there stunned, listening to my 11-year-old talk like she was already in college. They also assigned her a mentor, Amira, a software engineer who grew up in a small rural town just like ours. She told Lena, "You're not an exception. There are more kids like you. You just got brave at the right time." That line stuck with me because it's true. Lena didn't wait for permission to build something. She didn't wait until someone told her she was qualified or smart enough. She just started. She followed her curiosity and worked with what she had: broken parts, scraps, and stubborn determination. Now, she's part of a Junior Innovators program. Every Saturday morning, while most kids her age are sleeping in or scrolling through their phones, Lena's at the library with her laptop, sketching ideas for an upgraded design that could generate more voltage with fewer steps. She's researching how her invention could be used in refugee camps or during disaster relief efforts where power is scarce. She's thinking beyond our little town, beyond her own story. As for school, things are different. The same teachers who used to dismiss her now ask if she'll speak to the younger grades about STEM. The girl who called her the dumb kid of the divorce hasn't said another word since the local paper ran a story about her invention. Lena didn't gloat. She didn't change who she was. She just smiled, nodded, and went right back to work. And me? I've changed too. I used to carry so much guilt about the divorce, about working too much, about not giving Lena the normal life other kids seem to have. I felt like I was always falling short. Like no matter how hard I worked, I was always 2 steps behind. But that day at the science fair taught me something I'll never forget. I don't have to fight every battle for my daughter. I don't have to shield her from every insult or prove her worth to people who've already made up their minds. What I do have to do, what I get to do, is show up, believe in her, let her rise even when it's painful to watch, even when the world tries to tell her who she is. Because here's the truth. People will try to define your child by your past, by your mistakes, by your last name, or where you work, or what your family looks like. Let them talk. Let them whisper. Then teach your child how to speak with their work. That's what Lena did. And I'll never stop being in awe of her for it. So if you're watching this and you've got a kid who doesn't quite fit the mold, who's quiet or awkward or messy or misunderstood, don't panic. Don't try to make them blend in. Watch what lights them up. Invest in that. Believe in that. Because one day someone else will walk in, see what they've built, and say, "This needs to be patented." And when that day comes, you'll be so damn proud you didn't let the world tell them who they were. You let them show the world instead. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or just needed someone to believe in you, please take a second to like this video. It helps more than you know. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that where you come from doesn't define where you're going, and I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Tell me about a time you or your child proved someone wrong, or a moment when someone saw potential in you that you didn't even see yet. I read everyone. And if you want more true stories that lift you up, make you cry, or just remind you that resilience is real, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Thanks for being here. I'm grateful for you. We'll see you in the next story.